Is the Giants farm system good or is it bad? It kind of depends on who you ask and when you ask them, because we've had varying reports over the last couple of years, guys having down years, good years, injuries, all that. But it's a new season, the minor league season is underway, and all in all, the Giants have some intriguing prospects at the high levels, and they've been aggressive with promoting some of their top guys. So we'll get into all of it next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Stop throwing away your money, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. And by the way, we're also available on YouTube, so check us out there if you haven't already, and please hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. And coming up on today's show, I know I said yesterday we're going to get into some mailbag questions, and we might get into some later on in the day, but basically I forgot to put out the prompt last night. We still have a lot left over, but also I was going to do this, what I'm going to do today, I was going to do tomorrow anyway, and so today I want to give some prospect updates, and we're going to start with some of the guys who are in AAA, like on the doorstep of the major leagues, who are two of the Giants' top prospects. And we're talking about Casey Schmitt and Kyle Harrison. And so let's start with Kyle Harrison because I think he has the most hype around him. So let's just check in on him. He has made 6 starts in AAA Sacramento. And let's just be clear right off the bat that the minor leagues, and particularly this league, the Pacific Coast League, AAA, Sacramento plays in this league. It is a very lively offensive environment. And so the league average, performance for hitters is just kind of bonkers numbers that you would think they jump off the page, but then it's like, okay, well, that's average for that league. And so we need to take that into account. So for Kyle Harrison, it's a little bit trickier to translate for pitchers. Actually, Dan Szymborski of Fangraphs, who does the Zips projections, made a comment that basically performance in AAA right now kind of translates directly to what performance would be in the major leagues. You don't have to make like an adjustment. That's how lively the offensive environment is there. That like if you have a ERA of 3.8 in AAA, the way you kind of translate that to how is this guy going to perform in the major leagues, it's pretty much you say, okay, well, he'll still have a 3.8 ERA because, it's a big jump in difficulty, but it's a not as lively of an offensive environment as it is in AAA. So with all of that said, Kyle Harrison has a 4.02 ERA, which I do not have the league average ERA pulled up for me here, but I would imagine that that's significantly better than the league average. But more importantly than just ERA, because we are talking about just 6 starts, 15 and 2/3 innings, I want to look at the under the hood numbers. And what I see is one really good thing and one not so good thing. And the really good thing is that his strikeout rate is 35.1%, which is just fantastic. Striking out over 1 out of every 3 batters that he faces. However, on the downside, he has walked 27.3% of the batters he's faced. So that's crazy. I mean, he has either walked or struck out well more than half, a little bit more than half of, no, wait, that would be like 62%, right? Of the batters that he has faced. That is a crazy high level of either just walking somebody or striking them out. And so if you can just simply kind of get your command under control, to me, it's promising, but you do have to get your command under control. The good news is that over the last few outings, well, actually, okay, let's look at his individual starts this season. He's made 6 of them, and the walk totals in those outings 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 4. And so he just hasn't been able to really have an outing in which he wasn't having issues with walks. The strikeout totals, however, 4, 1, 2, and then 5, 8, 7. And some of these, I mean, in the last couple outings, like the last 2 outings, for example, he faced only 15 hitters and he struck out 8 of them. And in his latest outing, he faced only 14 hitters and he struck out 7 of them. And so basically, I mean, he's given up 10 hits and he's given up 21 walks and 27 strikeouts. So that just goes to show you that it's just basically strikeout, walk, and that's about it. 0 home runs allowed in this lively offensive environment. So let's just kind of look at when we look at run prevention. I mean, he's only given up 1 run, 3 runs, 1 run, 0 runs, 1 run, 1 run. And so there's a lot of positives here for Kyle Harrison. And just looking at some of the highlights, he's throwing mid to upper 90s. It's just a command issue. And so simply put, like as soon as this guy can get his command a little bit under a little bit more control, then he belongs in the major leagues. But until then, he really has to work on the command. But it's great to see the strikeout stuff. And I just want to point out, he's not a guy who's always struggled with command. If we look at in 2022, he started the year in high A Eugene, and it was there. I mean, his first professional season was in low A, and he had a walk rate of 12%, which was high. If we're talking 12% being high, think about what I'm saying here. In AAA right now, it's 27%. So more than double what was already considered kind of high. But to start the 2022 season in high A, made 7 starts and got that walk rate to a very reasonable 8.5%. So we know that it's in there. And his strikeout rate during that time was 50%. He literally struck out half of the batters he faced. So then he got promoted to Double A, where the walk rate ticked up a little bit to 11.2%. Strikeout rate came down a little bit, as you would expect as you move up levels. You're not going to dominate quite as much. Struck out 36% of hitters. And that's why I'm so encouraged. He gets promoted and now he's in the highest non-major league level and he's still striking out over a third of the batters that he faces. But that walk rate has totally ballooned to far more than double what it's been at any point, at any stop, at any level in his minor league career. And so that's basically the final ingredient is he just needs to command the strike zone a little bit better from what I'm seeing here. And as soon as that happens, this is going to be a guy that they're probably going to want to call up to the major leagues, especially those kind of strikeout numbers really jump off the page. And so let's move on for now. I just don't think he's ready quite yet because of the walk issues, but each and every start, an opportunity for him to go out there and just try to pound the strike zone. And once he figures that out, he's going to belong here. But Casey Schmitt is just another guy to definitely watch, not just now, but throughout every single day, basically. I check in on how Casey Schmitt is doing in AAA. And this is one of those cases where the surface level numbers are going to jump out to you, but then we realize that the league average is so lively that he's actually been a little bit below average, and yet there are still positive signs. And yesterday, one of the most positive signs of all. So we'll get into Casey Schmitt and many others in just a minute. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Now, how much time do you actually spend thinking about yourself instead of thinking about others, thinking about something stressful, thinking about like the Giants and just feeling that stress maybe if you're watching a game and they're losing and whatever, and not really handling the mental health side of it. And for me, I can speak from personal experience. I don't know if I'm being real with you right now. I don't know if the Giants had anything to do with this or not, but I had a significant health problem. And the post-traumatic stress from that was just impossible to deal with on my own. And I needed help and I needed therapy, frankly. And you don't have to have had something so extreme happen to you. I think the stresses of everyday life, work, relationships, sports can be really stressful. I mean, honestly, being a Giants fan, you talk about torture, you talk about it's not, the cardiac, it's taking years off your life. That stuff can be real. And no matter what it is, therapy, if you're thinking of starting therapy, do it and give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonmlb to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonmlb. All right, as promised, I want to get into a lot more prospects. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. The everydayers tomorrow are going to hear us definitely getting to some mailbag questions. I'm not going to forget to put out the prompt, so be on the lookout for that. The Giants play the Milwaukee Brewers tomorrow night at 7:15 Pacific. They're coming off a long, I think, 4-game series in Colorado where being at altitude and then coming back down to sea level, there's like a proven negative effect on teams. And so hopefully the Giants can take advantage of that and beat a good team in the Milwaukee Brewers, just like they did with the Houston Astros. Catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. So yeah, we talked about Kyle Harrison, and now I want to get into Casey Schmitt, and he's becoming a more and more interesting character to me. He was already interesting, but what's really making him more interesting is that David VR is really struggling at the major league level right now. And, we've talked about like mailbag questions to start the season because VR actually started off well. He obviously finished last year well, but the questions early in the season were like, if VR continues to play well, how does Casey Schmitt get an opportunity? Well, VR has not continued to play well. And overall in the season now, he's hitting 145 with a 242 on base and a 325 slugging. It's a 57 weighted runs created plus, and he's basically lost his kind of third base job to JD Davis, absolutely deservedly so. No like offense to David VR, but JD Davis has been playing like an all-star so far this year, and so it makes sense. And basically the role VR has fallen into is like starting against left-handed pitching at second base. And it also has something to do with Crawford being hurt because Thairo Estrada is playing shortstop. And so it kind of opens up second base, both against righties and lefties. But VR is not even starting against those righties. And what we're seeing is a lot of swing and miss, a lot of striking out, and a lot of popping up. It's been a struggle for VR. And it is early. And some of the numbers, like the batting average on balls in play is 167, whereas last year that batting average on balls in play was 300, and eventually, given more reps, I would expect that number to go up a lot. And so I'm not giving up on David VR, but what I am saying is you've got a really fascinating prospect in AAA. And so at a certain point, if VR just isn't getting it done, you may want to give Casey Schmitt a shot. And you've also got Brandon Crawford on the injured list. Really interestingly, Casey Schmitt has been playing some second base in AAA as well. The plan kind of was, and what I was seeing, what they were doing was that Schmitt was splitting his time between shortstop and third base. He's kind of a natural third baseman, and they've decided to start giving him shots at short because he played there last year when Marco Luciano went down with an injury and performed well enough that they're like, hey, this guy could be a shortstop. And then if you look at the fact that Brandon Crawford's contract is up at the end of the year, and so the Giants don't have a long-term shortstop per se, although, Thairo Estrada looks to me like he could handle that. But, having Casey Schmitt have the versatility to play either second, short, or third just gives the Giants all kinds of options. And he's just a plus defender. That's the most standout tool for Casey Schmitt, is that he's a good defender, like great defender. And so anyway, the fact that he's playing third, short, and second is significant. But what has he done offensively in AAA, where he kind of was aggressively promoted last year and ended up with 4 games in AAA to end the 2022 season? But now he's played in 29 games in AAA this year, has 130 plate appearances, and the slash line, this is what I'm saying, is good. I mean, if you just look at these numbers and think about them in terms of MLB average, this would be well above average by MLB standards. A 311 batting average, a 338 on base, and a 418 slugging. But by weighted runs created plus, which takes into account what league average is, and it says 100 is league average no matter what league you're in, Casey Schmidt's weighted runs created plus is only 80, meaning that slash line is actually about 80% below average offensively. So do I read too much into that? Would I like to see him like 40% above average? Of course. But what I'm seeing in the numbers is that he's not striking out, which is a good sign. The strikeout rate is only 19.2%, which is very modest. We've seen guys like David Villar and Joey Bart striking out close to 30% of the time in the minor leagues. And that alarms you because then you translate to the major leagues, and especially for hitters. I said for pitchers, it's like a 1-to-1 translation maybe for minor league performance going to the majors. But for hitters, it's kind of the opposite. Like your numbers need to be ridiculous in order for you to have offensive success in the major leagues. And for Schmitt, these numbers look pretty good by major league standards, but they wouldn't probably translate all that well to the majors right now. But for the longest time, Casey Schmitt hadn't even drawn a walk, but now that walk rate is up to 4.6%, so he has started to draw some walks. He's drawn 6 walks. He's struck out 25 times. I would venture to say, if I look kind of game by game and I just maybe cherry pick what has he done in the last, however many games. Let's start with April 21st to now. He's been 10% above average for the league, and the strikeout rate is just 10.9% during that span, with a walk rate of 6.5%. And so, yeah, and if we go even more recent, if we go since April 23rd, it's pretty similar, but a strikeout rate of only 7.9% and a walk rate of 7.9%. So I think we're seeing improvement in the areas we want to see improvement. And again, that weighted runs created plus over that span is 110. So he's been above average over the last week or two in AAA. And so I'm kind of cherry picking there. But also significantly, he hit his first AAA home run, at least of this season. He hit one last year too in his brief cameo there, but he hit a home run. So that's part of why he's been below average by the league standard there, is that there just hasn't been a lot of power. And you kind of want to see that from a guy like this. And so for him to get into his first home run yesterday, it wasn't a cheapie. He just kind of blasted it into left field, is nice to see. He's also stolen 3 bases there without being caught. So Casey Schmitt, I'm seeing recent improvement, and if VR just continues to struggle, yes, Casey Schmitt would require a 40-man move, and so it's not quite just as simple as like option David VR and call up Casey Schmitt. You'd have to do some kind of corresponding 40-man move, but Schmitt has definitely been someone to watch and someone who looks to be showing signs of improvement as the AAA season wears on, and we just know what he can do defensively. So definitely a shot we could see Casey Schmitt at some point, and maybe not in the too distant future. So coming up in just a minute, there are several more guys I want to talk to. Marco Luciano, huge news about Marco Luciano you're not going to want to miss, and several others. So we'll kind of run through them a little bit more quickly as we move forward with this kind of update on the state of the Giants farm system right now. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by RocketMoney. Do you know how much your subscriptions really cost? Most Americans think they spend around $80 a month on subscriptions when the actual total is closer to $200. If you don't know exactly how much you're spending every month, you need Rocket Money. Rising prices stressing you out? If you're looking for ways to cut costs, you need Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 a year. For me, I have had all kinds of unwanted subscriptions, and Rocket Money came through in the clutch, pointing them out to me and giving me the easy, simple tools to cancel those subscriptions. So why waste money? Just stop throwing your money away and cancel those unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb, rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. All right, as promised, more prospect news. I have several more guys I want to get to. I spent a lot of time on Kyle Harrison and Casey Schmitt, but Marco Luciano, major news on Marco Luciano. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we're going to be answering mailbag questions, and there's a lot going on with the Giants right now, whether it's the farm system, whether it's the Mauricio Dubon drama, whether it's the way the team's overall record of 13-7 being disappointing and the bullpen ERA being high, or the home runs and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot going on, so I can't wait to get to those mailbag questions with the everydayers tomorrow. The Giants play the Brewers Friday night at 7:15 Pacific. Brewers are a good team. Giants are coming off a series win against the defending champs, so it's a good matchup, and obviously the Giants would like to continue to carry the momentum from that Houston series into this series against the Brewers. Catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. So the major news on Marco Luciano is that he's back. He's finally back. He's in Double-A, and technically it's his Double-A debut. I think he played in the postseason in Double-A last year. I don't know how many at-bats he had, but that doesn't technically count on his official record. And so this is his Double-A debut, and that is a big deal. It's also a big deal because they didn't want him going there until he was fully healthy and ready to go. So he stuck around in extended spring training where he was just DHing for a long time. I don't know how long he was just DHing, but for a while he was just DHing. And then he was playing some innings in the field, and then eventually worked his way up to playing full games in the field and hitting and coming out of it feeling good and healthy. And I guess he did. And, sometimes we don't get updates on these things and we really want them, but just all of a sudden we learn that he has been assigned to Double-A Richmond. And so that's the highest level he's reached. He's supposedly healthy and ready to go. And so it's great news, and just another guy to kind of watch every single day, because like I said in the open, how good is the Giants farm system? It depends on who you ask and when you ask them, because going into last season, Marco Luciano consistently rated in the top 20 on top 100 lists, but then he has a down year fueled by a back injury, and he falls on some lists to number 90 something. And so is it that the talent went away, or is it just they have a hard time ranking him highly when he got hurt and the performance kind of suffered after he got hurt? And so it's a big year for a lot of guys in this way, in that, can they rebound? Can Marco if he can just tear up Double-A, they probably wouldn't be afraid to promote him to Triple-A. And Gabe Kapler himself has said that we could see Marco Luciano make his major league debut in 2023. And that would be very exciting, but Luciano's got to go out there and do it. He played one game. I think he had 5 plate appearances and 4 strikeouts and 1 walk. So no balls in play, but it's just good to see him out there, and we're not going to judge him based on one game. So moving right along through the list of guys I want to talk about, Patrick Bailey, as I have mentioned, the catcher, the Giants' first-round pick from 2020, was recently promoted to Triple-A. And this is a big deal. It also is part of the reason why they let Gary Sanchez opt out of his minor league deal. They weren't prepared to call him up, which would have meant optioning Joey Bart or getting rid of Blake Sable. they decided they're comfortable with Bart and Sable on the Major League roster for now, but Patrick Bailey exists as kind of a backup option, and now he is in AAA, and it is no small deal there. Not saying he's necessarily ready for the major leagues, but from what I understand, defensively he is ready for the major leagues, but he's just got to work on the hitting. I know he's a switch hitter, and I think he's better from the left side, which would be good because there's more right-handed pitchers. And, if Sable struggles, like you could see Bailey being that guy who hits from the right side, because they want to split up time at catcher. They don't want to. I saw some comments on Twitter like, just let Joey Bart play every single day. None of this give him rest stuff. That's just not how it's ever going to be. Even Buster Posey in his final season here was only playing 2 out of every 3 days. And so like at most, I think you're going to see a timeshare that's 2 out of every 3 days. For the catchers, it's just because it's a grueling position. And so ideally you have 2 catchers you like and who perform, and you can kind of get the best matchups and keep them fresh all along the way. So for Bailey, I mean, he's only played in 5 games, 21 plate appearances, but his walk rate is a ridiculous 29% in those 5 games with a strikeout rate of 14%. And so that means what? He's walked 6 times and struck out 3 times in 21 plate appearances. So that's kind of his MO, is that he's got a really good eye. And some have said he borders on passive at times, which can be its own problem. But so far he's held his own in that regard, but hasn't really hit much, but it is a small sample. So certainly worth mentioning that he's there in AAA and just someone to monitor each and every day. And we will be providing more regular updates on the state of the farm system, because some of these guys, you're going to see them in the major leagues this year. And it feels like that's a new thing. Whereas in recent years, we've just been kind of waiting on a lot of these guys to advance to the point where they're at now. So quickly, Carson Whisenhunt was the Giants' second round pick in last year's draft? Yeah, 66th overall. And man, he dominated low A, has a really good changeup, made 4 starts, and they quickly promoted him to high A, where he dominated in his 1 start there. Had, what did he have? 6 strikeouts and no walks in 4 innings in his high A debut. And so I don't know how aggressively they're going to continue to promote this guy, but he's got really good stuff, really good changeup. Like the changeup is plus pitch, and they aggressively promoted him after just 4 starts in low A. And then also Luis Matos, just to check in on him, another guy that a lot of publications had as a top 40 prospect in baseball, but then had a down year last year. Well, he's having an up year this year at the highest level he's ever played at in Double A. It's kind of like Marco Luciano. Hasn't played there before, but what we've seen from Matos is suddenly just really good plate discipline, a 16% walk rate versus a 10% strikeout rate. Anytime your walk rate is higher than your strikeout rate is a good sign, and those are both just high, like good. The strikeout rate is very low at 10%, and the walk rate at 16% is very high. Hasn't hit for much power, but overall, 284 average, and thanks to that walk rate, a 398 on base percentage, and about 30% above average for the league. And so the young Luis Matos, only 21 years old, doing well in Double A, and it wouldn't shock me if he keeps it up, if he gets promoted to Triple A at some point as well. And so there's a lot of, I think, positive things going on early. And also Von Brown, just like Marco Luciano, Von Brown was injured, and we were just kind of waiting for him to come back, and he's come back. And despite kind of ending 2022 in Double A, they initially are sending him to low A to kind of work his way back. And I assume, he's kind of dominated there in 4 games. And so pretty soon he'll probably get sent back to Double A. And so that's basically all the time we have for today. And there are some other guys I wanted to get to, but those are the main guys. And I think so far, so good. You'd like to see Casey Schmitt kind of hit for some power a little bit more. But other than that, these are a lot of positive reports, and I was happy to provide them today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers, tomorrow on the show, we'll be doing a mailbag episode. So look out on Twitter for the prompt, and feel free to ask any questions you may have, and we will try to get to as many of them tomorrow as we can. And also, the Giants play the Milwaukee Brewers on Friday night at 7:15. Be sure to catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. Giants are going to be facing, I believe, Corbin Burns in game 1 of that series. It feels like every time the Giants play the Brewers, they end up facing Corbin Burns. They never miss that guy, and he's good. And so it's going to be a tough matchup. If you don't like the Giants striking out a lot, then maybe don't watch this game but do. Anyway, we'll talk more about it tomorrow as the game won't have started by that point either. So anyway, once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot. So thanks in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Cannot wait to be with you again tomorrow for the mailbag episode. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked on Giants.